Fate could change thanks to the tiniest details being plucked out of the universe. One decision could shift the entire course of the universe. In this case, what if Obi-Wan Kenobi hadn't lived the same life he had? What if he wasn't around to train Anakin Skywalker, or protect Luke on Tatooine? What if Darth Maul had changed fate forever? During the legendary battle between Qui Gon and Darth Maul, Obi-Wan was bared from the clash. There was a sea of crimson before him, distorting his vision until his eyes blurred. The sphere of the room added to the dizzy sensation circling his mind. The lime of Master Qui Gon Jinn's lightsaber contrasted the deep maroon of the double-bladed Sith. They banged and hissed, creating a stream of smoke that slid silently through the air. Sweat flared his nostrils until he was tasting his own bodily fluids. Each second that ticked by brought a new action. 1 second, Qui-Gon was blocking a strike. 2, Maul was performing an acrobatic. Obi-Wan couldn't keep track of it. 3, the gates hummed and grounded Obi-Wan to the reality of the situation. The exposed pipes and flashing buttons on the back wall blended with the rest of the palette that was overstimulating him. Then there was a gap at the center. It was an endless pit that called to him. Each element brewed inside Obi-Wan's mind. In another reality, Obi-Wan would have ignored it. He would have pushed through and put his duties first. However, when he heard the grunt from his master and a blade penetrating skin, followed by a humming and the aroma of burning skin, his senses blew up at one another. They exploded until his body fought for control. All he saw was his master fall to his knees, his navy eyes dropping to a shade of pale that matched Obi-Wan's blade. The scream that parted his lips was one he never remembered uttering, but his throat burned as if he had been screeching for hours. The foe in front of him whipped his head around, not paying the fallen Jedi any mind. Obi-Wan's world waltzed around it, and it came crashing down on him. When the barrier shut off, the cloak commenced in his mind. The pendulum swung as the beast inside him erupted from his soul in a blaze of fire. His sword seemed to move on its own, and the fury he had pent up shrieked its way through his lungs, flying into the air in a form of battle cry. Zap. Blades connected. Darth Maul doing a series of twists and turns that had Obi-Wan going on the defensive. 1 strike, Obi-Wan blocked. 2, blocked. 3, Obi-Wan had to jump out of the way and swing his saber to fend off the horde. The gates behind him swooshed and whacked his eardrums, the burnt flesh still wrapping around his nostrils. His eyes couldn't help themselves, and he risked a peek at his master. The sight was as expected, a limp body, his face in pain or in fear. From his position, Obi-Wan didn't know which emotion clouded his master's thoughts, if he was still alive, that was. Right when he brought his gaze back, he was met with a fury of color, each one varying shade of red. The chaos carried on. Obi-Wan nearly tripping and falling into the chasm more times than he could count. As the time ticked away, and the pendulum threatened to crack, Obi-Wan's senses swelled until his eyes and tongue went with them. What came next was a distraction. The emotions he tried to hold shattered through his shaking spine. It snapped through his back and created a shockwave of goosebumps. The distraction caused him to flub his next swing. His plan was to block and follow it up with a sidestep that would allow him the cushion of space he desired. Those plans sizzled away in the wind, and the next thing he knew, a blade sunk itself in the same spot it had rested inside his master. Obi-Wan didn't scream, he didn't cry, and he didn't whimper. Just as the fallen Jedi behind him did, he dropped to his knees, his weapon going with it. It clattered until it fell into the abyss beside him. And though it all, his mind went numb. The senses that were overwhelmed fell into an eerie silence. It was a type of isolation, his eyes spinning to pinpoint what he could do to stop the Sith. When he realized it was too late, his body slumped to the cold floor. It matched the temperature of his skin. In a way, it was like Obi-Wan was becoming one with it. Maroon and black markings filled his vision, and that was when Darth Maul stood above him, like a spear. The height difference had Obi-Wan wishing he could shrivel inside himself. For the first time in his life, Obi-Wan had succumbed to the fear inside of him. After all, he had lost, and all he had yet to lose. He gave in after watching the one he cared for die in front of his eyes. With those thoughts in his mind, he fell into a sleep that would never end. Both Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui Gon Jinn fell victim to the wrath known as Darth Maul. From the point on, fate had shifted to the point where the galaxy was forever rewritten. A chain of events had occurred. Anakin Skywalker was left alone for years. The Jedi Council refused to train him, and without Qui Gon Jinn or Obi-Wan, no one dared protest the decision. As the years passed by, Anakin remained on Tatooine in isolation. He earned a deep purpose in life, his anger building from the horrors he had to witness on his home planet. With powerlessness and wrath eating up inside of him, he sought out other means of an escape. Poorly, he trained himself in the ways of the Force, harnessing abilities he had never attempted to tap into before. The strong connection he had allowed him to gain the strength he needed to save his mother, but it wasn't for long. His use of the Force didn't go unnoticed by the higher powers in the galaxy. The Jedi Council were too stubborn to overturn their decision, but they did monitor Skywalker, due to the increase in his connection with the Force. Eventually, the connection grew so strong, they moved to intervene. The next day, he vanished. Little did the Council know, Palpatine had already made his move. Thanks to the Jedi Council's plans to keep Anakin on watch, Palpatine became aware of the young Force user. That was when he made the move to train Anakin, to give him the gift of power he so craved. The training took Anakin from his home, leading to the death of his mother. Anakin blamed Palpatine for the tragedy. However, Palpatine continued to manipulate Skywalker. Since Anakin had no morals or Jedi code to base himself on, he fell prey to it more easily than he had in other universes. Although Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon's fate had changed how the story was told, Anakin ended up in the Emperor's hands nonetheless. The Emperor's plans took longer and required more detail, but eventually Order 66 was executed. After Anakin secured a spot as Palpatine's new apprentice, when he bested Maul in a duel, the galaxy fell into the Emperor's rule. Anakin took the name Darth Vader, but thanks to Obi-Wan's demise, the Mustafar encounter never happened. That led to the man never needing a new suit. No Luke Skywalker and Leia were born. The galaxy became the Emperor's puppet. Jedi like Cal Kalest had tried and failed to stop the threat of the Empire. Anakin put a stop to them personally, and he won the Emperor's favor due to his unwavering faith and his skills. It seemed like a detail that wouldn't impact the galaxy on such a wide scale. Obi-Wan's demise caused a domino effect that led to the galaxy's enslavement. Freedom was stripped from everybody, and everyone that lived in the galaxy had no hope, no savior. Any prophecy was broken because of the change in Obi-Wan's fate. Now the Emperor could do whatever he wanted when he wanted, with no risk to operate. Anakin was by his side, with all his limbs attached. That was how the galaxy would change forever. And that is going to be What If Obi-Wan Kenobi Was Killed in Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. We can see how easily Palpatine would have taken Anakin if the Jedi Council didn't have him as a Padawan. If you guys enjoy these Star Wars what ifs and would like to see more, do make sure to subscribe, like, share, and turn those notifications on so you and your friends are all up to date with the latest content. But anyways, as always guys, thanks for tuning in and have a fantastic day.